Hello and welcome to So You Want to Be an In-House Counsel. This program is brought to you by the ABA Law Student Division, Young Lawyers Division, Section of Litigation, and the Career Center. ABA membership is free for law students. The Law Student Division offers premium benefits, which includes access and savings for Quimby.com, discounts on bar review programs, and up to $50 off West academic casebooks, and a legal ethics bundle that includes a free model rules of professional conduct ebook you can upgrade for only $25. The Young Lawyers Division is the ABA's home for the new attorney, giving members tools to navigate the early years of career, opportunities to network, and resources to grow skill sets. ABA lawyer members under the age of 36 or in practice 5 years or less, and law student members are automatically enrolled in the division for free. The Section of Litigation provides students opportunities to network with experienced litigators and resources like quick sound advice podcasts and telephone roundtable discussions, perfect for busy law students. Section membership is free for law students, so join today. The ABA Career Center offers both career development resources and a job board for law students, lawyers, and other legal professionals across all disciplines and career stages. Now we'll hand things over to Jerome Crawford to get us started. Jerome?
Thanks, Tracy. Greetings, everyone. I guess Tracy noted my name is Jerome Crawford. I will be serving as today's moderator. Quick intro about myself. I am presently Associate General Counsel of Horizon Global Corporation, a publicly traded company. Our company, we are a world leader in custom towing, trailing, and cargo management products. In this role, I do an array of things spanning areas such as compliance, mergers and acquisition, intellectual property, employment, and product liability. I also serve in various roles to the bar. Namely, I'm currently the president of the Wolverine Bar Association and Foundation here in the state of Michigan, as well as a member of the State Bar Michigan Young Lawyers Section Executive Council. And with the ABA, I'm pleased to serve on the Men of Color Project and a member of the YLD in a variety of roles. Quick fun fact about me, I'm also an actor, professional model and comedian by night. So no pressure though. So in case no one laughs here, then put all that on me. But doing the majority of the work and the heavy lifting here are my esteemed co-panelists, Nikki, Odom, Dibley, and Elizabeth Timkovich. With that, I'm going to allow them to give a brief intro about themselves as well. I will note that all of our bios will be attached to today's materials as well. So with no further ado, Nikki, if you'd like to take us away and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So my name's Nikki. Currently, I am employment counsel at 3M here in Minnesota. I've been here about a year and a half. Prior to that, I worked at a global coatings and chemicals, a Dutch coatings and chemicals company called AkzoNobel. I was there about almost 6 years before I made the move here to 3M. Prior to that, I've always been a labor and employment attorney, and so I worked at a couple of mid-sized firms in Chicago. Currently, I am on the membership and marketing committee in the ABA, and I've been working with the ABA, volunteering my time with the ABA for the last, I'd say, maybe 7 or 8 years. And then this year, I recently also joined leadership in the Association of Corporate Counsel on the program committee in the Employment, Labor, and Labor Law Network. So a little bit about me.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Nikki. All right, Elizabeth, tell us about yourself.
Sure thing. My name's Elizabeth Timkovich. I was in private practice for about 15 years after graduating law school, and I handled really a wide range of different types of litigation. I had always been a litigator. I currently am in-house at Wells Fargo. I transitioned to in-house a little over a year ago, although prior to my full-time transition to in-house, I was seconded to Wells Fargo for about a year with their regulatory enforcement team to deal with some regulatory investigations that they were handling at the time. The interesting thing is that once I actually took a job here in-house at Wells Fargo, I no longer handle litigation per se. Instead, what I do is handle internal investigations and escalated regulatory risks and issues for the mortgage bank. And so I have somewhat of an interesting transition to in-house life because I really changed my practice, but I still call on my prior litigation experience every day.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Elizabeth, as well as Nikki, for the introductions and the bios. And as you all have probably been able to hear with the variety of backgrounds that we have, and similarly, I came from private practice, part of a large law firm before going in-house. People often ask the question, what is the role of an in-house counsel? And I can tell you, and I'm sure my colleagues would attest to it, the role has really changed. So as a quick summary and overview of what it really means is essentially you are, in most common circumstances, an employee of a company, client, of an organization or the sort. Thinking of it this way, for those that have the firm parallel, instead of handling maybe discrete issues for a variety of clients, so you handle a specific employment issue for client A tax matter for client B, something along those lines for client C that involves a merger or an acquisition, divestiture. Instead of that, you now have more often than not a variety of issues that your one client faces. Now, that one client has many facets, many faces. Sometimes it's, in my industry, for instance, we're manufacturing, so it could be an engineering team one day, sales the next, corporate C-suite leadership, and the different things that are faced there. Another way to get into an in-house role could be through a secondment. So if you're part of a firm, and maybe your firm represents a particular client and they need support with additional attorneys, you might be sent to that particular client on a part-time or even possible short-term, full-time basis to serve as in-house counsel for that client. There's also another distinction, and Elizabeth, you maybe sort of think about this in your comments, the difference between a generalist and a specialist. Now, what that is it's very common. So in my role, for instance, as Associate General Counsel, I handle, dozen or more, probably different, let's call them legal disciplines or practice fields, as I noted. It's also very common in some roles, particularly in former iterations of my own company, where we used to have specialist in-house counsel. So there was someone specifically, they were IP counsel. Someone else was employment counsel. What that means is if you're a specialist, maybe in a private practice role, you could go into in-house counsel and do that same specialized legal practice area or field. Or you could step in and then you kind of become the kid that likes cookies, cake, and ice cream all at the same time. And that's totally okay too, where you kind of become a jack of all trades and have to be able to sort of quarterback and govern a variety of issues. You may rely more on outside counsel or other specialized support. A couple of final points about the role of an in-house counsel is there was one point in time, I think in-house counsel was seen as the promised land. And by that, I mean, if you were in a law firm or an environment where you had certain billable hour requirements, if you had an unorthodox schedule, it was seen as a place where I can go and work 9 to 5, clock in, clock out, and I'm done, right? I will say that while that may happen in some circumstances, still more and more today, the role of in-house counsel is changing from beyond just being a lawyer within the company to being more of a business partner. So being beyond just I'm here to provide, my legal acumen. They know you're the lawyer when you walk in the room. You provide another additional value. So the reality is, and particularly in my case, and my colleagues may attest too, it's not so much 9 to 5, cut your life off. Particularly if you have a company that has, say, global operations, you may still have unorthodox hours and commitments and things of that nature. The main takeaway, and before I kick it back to my colleagues here, is that all in-house roles are not created equal. Right? There's a variety of ways they can actually operate, and it has a lot to do with the exact company or organization or institution that you're going to. So, all right, with that, let's go ahead and dive right in. Elizabeth, how about you kick us off here? We want to talk about the career path. How did you become interested in a career as being in-house counsel?
Sure. Well, when I was in law school, between my first and my second year, I was looking for a summer associate position that would leave me within the state. At the time, I was at Yale Law School, so I was looking for something that was near New Haven, Connecticut, and I didn't want to go elsewhere. Most of the positions at that time, summer associates, that were available were primarily located in other locations, in New York City or elsewhere. And one of the few exceptions to that was General Electric. They were looking for a couple of summer associates to work in their in-house legal department for the summer. And so I was very lucky enough to get that position. And what I worked with the in-house litigation and intellectual property group for that summer going into my second year of law school. And I just found it to be such a fascinating experience. And I learned so much about intellectual property concerns from a business perspective that I often thought that I would like to pursue an in-house career. However, at least at that time, it was very uncommon for anybody to go in-house straight out of law school. I know GE, for example, did not hire anyone who didn't already have 5 years of experience as a practicing attorney. So for my second year, my 2L summer, I went and worked for a firm as a summer associate, and then ultimately took a job after law school with that law firm. And I just fell in love with that firm. I loved the work. I loved the people. It was a very small boutique firm. We handled primarily antitrust and intellectual property, although I became increasingly involved in commercial litigation. I made a move for geographic purposes around my 5th year in private practice, moved down to Charlotte, North Carolina, and started up with a large law firm. I hadn't intended to ever go big law or work for a large law firm. I had hoped to stay with a small firm since that was the experience that I had up to that point. But at the time, those were the jobs that were available in the market where I was moving. And I loved, no criticisms of that firm at all. I loved working for them. But then I followed a couple of partners that I was working for that law firm over to another large law firm. And this one definitely had the big law culture, what I would consider a big law culture. So really no complaints against the firm. I loved the work that I was doing. Increasingly, the longer that I was a partner at that firm, my focus became more and more on management of portfolio of litigation and management of large teams. And I was focused more on the higher level strategy of litigation and the strategy for managing the client. And I really loved that work. And so I started thinking back about in-house counsel life, and there were a lot of similarities I found to the work that I was doing in those last 4 or 5 years of private practice to what I had observed during my summer associate years, my summer associate summer at General Electric, the focus on keeping the higher level strategy and the portfolio management. So an opportunity came. I was offered the chance to come and be a secondee inside Wells Fargo when a huge regulatory government investigation was starting up. And I took that opportunity and decided that I would treat that as sort of my test run of in-house counsel life to see if it would suit me and I would suit it. And so for about a year, I worked on government and regulatory investigations of the bank. And as part of that, I was handling a regulatory enforcement matter that involved a mortgage issue. And then the legal team that supports the mortgage bank, because I was working so closely with them in my secondment role, actually offered me a job to start up a new team for them that handled high-risk, escalated regulatory and internal investigation matters. And so if you'd have asked me 15 years ago whether I ever would be someone who sat inside a bank and counseled a line of business as opposed to being potentially an in-house litigator, I would have thought, no way, I couldn't do that. If a business person called me up, I wouldn't know how to answer their question. I can tell them whether they're likely to get sued, but I wouldn't know whether to tell them, oh, sure, yeah, no problem. That comports with your policy on this. But that's not actually my role. I work for a team that has about 10 attorneys on it, and we're all we each have our specialties. So I have team members that support a particular side of the business. I have other team members that supported a different subline of business. I have team members that support labor and employment issues, and then I support the internal investigations and regulatory items. So we all collaborate, but we handle different things. And I couldn't be happier. I never would have thought I'd end up in this particular position, but it's turned out just wonderfully.
Wow, that's an incredible pathway. And to your point, sometimes we end up somewhere you ask yourself 10 years prior, 20 years prior, you say, I never would have thought I ended up here. I myself am a reformed litigator, so I sort of I really vibe with you there. And we go, wait a second, I can imagine not being in court or not doing those type of things. So Nikki, tell us how you got into where you are now. Tell us about your career path and how you got into your current role.
Sure. So I am a little abnormal. If you go back and look at my high school yearbook, it says that I want to be a corporate attorney, and that's what I am. So I actually back then I'm not sure I really understood what a corporate attorney did. I probably just thought it sounded cool, but I think it was kind of written in the stars for me. So in college, I actually got a business degree. And when I decided to go to law school, I decided to go to law school as a sophomore in college, and knew immediately that I wanted to work for a company just because I wanted to marry my background in business with the law. So I always was trying to go in-house. Even, in law school, I knew that that was my end goal. I was lucky enough to do a summer associate stint at American Family Insurance between my 1L and 2L summers. And so, I really liked kind of the camaraderie. I liked being in that kind of environment in-house and having, working with different businesses and applying law and giving advice. I really enjoyed that. So then my second summer between my 2L and 3L year, I actually discovered employment law. Up until that point, I hadn't really had a focus in terms of having a specialty. And I ended up being a summer associate at a large firm in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and had discovered employment law and fell in love with it immediately. I mean, I remember I was helping an associate out with a summary judgment motion that he was writing, and I was tasked with doing the facts section. And, the deposition basically read like a novel. It was great. So I was hooked. And from then on, any employment case I could get my hands on, I did. Coming out of school, I came out in kind of the dot-com bust, right after the dot-com bust. So it was a little difficult to get jobs in firms at that time. So I ended up actually working in a plaintiff's firm and doing plaintiff's work, which let me tell you, that's probably the best experience that you can get coming out of law school, because you get to do everything immediately. I was doing research, of course, but I was also getting out and, taking depositions and defending depositions, and I was doing hearings, and I loved it. So, I was kind of doing that litigator thing. But, I didn't want to stay because, I always wanted to switch and be on management side. I didn't stay long on the plaintiff side, even though, like I said, it's probably like the best experience that you could get coming out of school, because it was just really exciting. And, I had my own caseload of, 30 to 40 cases at any given time. But then I made the switch, moved to Chicago, and ended up working at, a couple of mid-sized firms doing management side employment law. Again, mostly employment litigating, I would say. And then, I just wasn't loving it. I wasn't loving firm life. And so then I started to get focused in again on going in-house. And, I think it was difficult just because I was more of a litigator than an advisor at that point, and kind of kept running into this chicken and egg type situation, where, people kept asking, well, how much, advising are you doing? And I hadn't been doing a ton of it. And, also they wanted in-house experience. And so I ended up taking a contracting job, actually, with Axon Nobel, and thinking, okay, this way I can at least get some in-house experience under my belt. And then I actually got certified as a professional in human resources, because I also, just wanted to show that I understood what HR clients were, I knew how to talk their talk, and I knew what they were working on a daily basis. I think I had a lot of that just from my practice, but I thought that would give me a leg up too. And so then ended up working for Axon Nobel from about like September to December, and in December they made me an offer to stick around full time. And so then I started working as their only labor and employment attorney. And I was the only one globally for a while. And then they added somebody in the home office in Amsterdam. And then there were two of us. And So, and I loved it. I love being in-house. I love working with the businesses. I love having a deep relationship with my clients. I like knowing, what kind of projects they're working on, what's coming down the pike, helping them with strategy. And it's hard too, right? Because, businesses are ever changing places, probably like law firms too, but, your clients and your friends move on, and sometimes not by their own volition. So, and then I made the move to 3M because my husband got transferred and ended up in Minnesota, which I never thought I'd end up in Minnesota, but I'm liking it a lot, and so I'm doing a lot of the same things, but on a much larger scale. Since this company, 3M, is literally twice the size of my last company.
Definitely. This is a really helpful perspective that you both gave about looking at in-house counsel, and particularly looking early. Elizabeth, you made a comment earlier about a lot of times folks were not taking students straight out of law school, and I think the recommendation is, nowadays that seems to be a shift in there. It used to be the old adage, go to a firm 3 to 5 years, 5 to 7 years, then you can look at in-house. But that alone doesn't necessarily secure you an opportunity for in-house role, Elizabeth. I mean, and I know there's some difficulties in securing those positions and the level of persistence that you need. So Elizabeth, maybe you want to speak on that.
Yeah, well, I could just add that having now gone through the search process of trying to get a job in-house, I have a different perspective on it than I did going in. When I took the secondment here at Wells, and then after starting here, I quickly determined that this is where I wanted to work. I figured that would be easy. I mean, I had been a partner in a law firm. I'd been practicing at that time for about 14 years and thinking I'm already inside the bank. Everybody knows me. This will be a piece of cake. And so I was looking for a couple of opportunities in the litigation side of the bank. But the difficulty is that because I was so senior, I was really only looking at very senior level positions. And that is incredibly hard, at least in an institution of this size with a legal department as large as ours. It's incredibly hard to come in from the outside and land a very senior position when you have folks who have been here for decades moving up the ranks. But I have observed, by contrast, how much potential there is for more junior attorneys or attorneys that are willing to start a little lower on the rung to get their feet in the door and get into a legal department, at least here at the bank. So I would say I would go back to myself if I could, maybe 10 years ago, and say, hey, if you still want to do in-house counsel, maybe start looking sooner rather than later. If you want a very smooth, easy application process, because I think it would have been a lot easier to secure an in-house position, at least at a large institution like this, had I started sort of lower on the totem pole when I was a little bit more junior. Now, granted, I did get my position here, but it took a lot of trying just to find the right fit at the right seniority level.
Definitely. I mean, as the market gets more competitive, it takes more to sort of get there. But to that point, I think looking early, thinking about it earlier. I mean, Nikki, if we could all be like you and know in high school, right, that we want to be corporate attorneys, and it's a great start, and we all be in a much better place of having our lives figured out. So, a transition, people often wonder, you mentioned this, Nikki, about being a litigator versus being an advisor. People wonder, what do you do as in-house counsel? Say, if you're not billing hours and you don't send bills out to clients, not paying for, what do you do? Do you draft memos still? You don't care about citations? You don't use Westlaw or LexisNexis? What do you do? So maybe tell us briefly about how you describe a day in the life of an in-house counsel, Nikki.
Sure. And let me say this. When I was at AXO, we did bill hours, and I'm, putting up air quotes if you could see me. So we did have to track our hours, actually, because, we were a cost center. I think that's one of the things that, people don't necessarily understand about the legal department in a company. We don't make money. And although, I think we save the company money in the end, we are kind of are considered, we can be considered a money pit. And so we actually did track our hours because our department was actually billed out to the businesses. And so, so don't necessarily think that, if you're trying to escape the billable hour, that in-house is the place to do it, because that's not necessarily true. I've heard of other places where you do track hours. I don't here at 3M. But what does my typical day look like? So it's a lot of advising. It's a lot of, consulting, and I do a lot of emails. It's a lot of questions from my clients, and my clients here in 3M as an employment attorney are primarily the businesses and the business HR folks. And they have and their questions run the gamut on and this is probably stuff that you would see even in the firm, but about terminations and about reductions in force and about ADA issues and about workers' comp situations, and so a lot of what I do on a daily basis is interacting with my clients and helping them work through their various employment law problems. Then there's a lot of long-term projects in terms of getting certain pieces of compliance together as new laws come out. How are we going to respond to those? How are we going to change what we're doing if we have to? Then there are the head of our HR, so our chief HR officer has, and our CEO has certain things that they want to get done. And that ends up, trickling down through the businesses, and they have certain major projects and huge cultural shifts that they want to implement. And so, I work with the various businesses and HR to figure out, okay, how are we going to make that work? And what does that look like? And, within the law, like, how can we do what we need to do for the least amount of money? And then, I think, and I will get to this, but I think, one of the best things about my day is I don't know a lot of times what my day is going to look like. And I find that, to me, that I love that. I think I might be doing A, B, and C, but then I get an email or a phone call, and that in my whole week is completely turned upside down because, one of my clients is having an issue that's an emergency.
Yeah, I mean, variety is truly the spice of life in the world of in-house. Even as you've noted, Nikki, when you may have a specialized focus, it being employment, whether you're doing specialist versus generalist, the things that you could encounter are varied. And it sounds like folks really care about getting the answer, right? You mean a lot of advising, a lot of emails. I mean, Elizabeth, would you agree with that when you describe sort of how a typical day looks for you as well? That it's more about that guidance and being a trusted advisor.
That's exactly it. In fact, I had sort of written a note to myself while we were talking of, what does my day-to-day look like? And exactly what you said, Jerome. It's all about giving a quick gut check. So that's where, in some ways, I find that the length of experience practicing really helps, because I think the longer you practice, the more you kind of feel comfortable just without, like, I haven't been able to research this, but my gut tells me we might stand a risk here if ... If we need additional research, if you need more specifics, let me know. So it's a whole lot of responses like that. Basically, it's learning how to speak in bullets. That's my day-to-day life here.
That's a great way of putting it. Learning how to speak in bullets, right? Because oftentimes, people say lawyers we're thorough by nature, right? And so used to giving the full story, but the way and the speed with which business moves, it's about, I don't need you to give me the memo that you can prove to me, right, that in fact what you're saying is the law or true, give me the citations. It's, you're the trusted advisor. To your point, speak with bullets. I love that. So transitioning to sort of the love versus hate, right? Everything's not all peachy keen. It's not all sunshine and rainbows every day. So, Elizabeth, what are things that maybe you love about your job, as well as some challenges that you face?
Well, one of the things I truly love, especially in the role I currently am in that I'm supporting the business line as opposed to working on litigation matters, is I'm able to be proactive instead of reactive most days. I'm still reacting to concerns over potential risk issues, but when I give advice, the company can proactively implement changes to try to minimize or avoid those risk issues. So it's great to be in a position to be able to give advice to a company and have them act on it and thereby avoid risk, as opposed to telling them providing advice that will resolve an individual litigation case. So I love that. I love being able to affect real change in the business. And as much as I enjoyed my private practice work, it's what I had hoped to gain in in-house life, and what has indeed been what I've experienced is real honest to goodness collaboration and teamwork. My colleagues and I in the legal department, I feel like we really do, for the most part, put any feeling of ego or competition at the side, and we really just pair up together and work together on common goals to try to support the business. And I love that. Every day I love my job.
That's awesome. And to your point, collaboration is such an essential element to being able to reach some level of success, and proactive versus reactive, because oftentimes particularly if you're a litigator, more often than not, it's a reactive, type of scenario, whether you're reacting to someone actually, advancing a suit, or you need to be reacting to a wrong having occurred, and then you need to recommend that you advance suit or do something in the realm of dispute resolution. Nikki,
right.
Tell us about. I'm sorry.
I would just say don't take any of my comments as being critical of litigation. If I was still working with the litigation department, I'm sure I would be enjoying that too. It's just the proactive, the switch to that has been very gratifying. Got
it. Great distinction. Nikki, tell us from your perspective, challenges you may face, as well as what do you love about being an in-house counsel?
Let's see. I'll start with the good stuff first. So, kind of like I said before, I really like not knowing what's going to happen on a day-to-day basis. I really like getting to know my clients on a close level, and getting to know, and watch them as they move, throughout their careers. But also, I love seeing a project to its end, because I felt like a lot of times in the firm, you get a problem, you kind of, tell them what the law is, or, from a litigation perspective, their chances of success or whatever. And then you may not hear about whatever happened in the end. And so here, you get to see things through to conclusion, from inception to conclusion, which I really like. Plus I have the best stories. Like, if you ever want to, a great laugh, go talk to an employment attorney in general, but definitely talk to an in-house attorney, because, the stuff that we come across and the stuff that people are willing to do at work just constantly amazes me. So I would say, I definitely love that about my job. Challenges, I would say, there's a ton of stakeholders that you have to please, and inform. And so something that seems so simple, just getting a $5,000 settlement doesn't seem like it would be that hard, but there are a lot of people that you have to tell, and inform, and I think this, and I think this really depends on your company, but I also think that the larger the company, the more that this is true, because certain people just aren't going to know what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, so you have to kind of give them information so they're not surprised, and so I think a lot of time, and sometimes too much time is given into just informing a lot of people, so nobody's taken by surprise. So I'd say that's one of the things I probably like the least.
Definitely, management of personalities is a huge aspect of in-house. All right, speed round, team, and Nikki, starting with you on this one. Top 3 skills. What are the top 3 skills someone needs to work as an in-house counsel and to be successful?
From my perspective, I really think you need to be an influencer. I think you need to be able to build trust. And I think, the best in-house counsel are also great business people.
Elizabeth, what are your thoughts?
For me, I think you need to be confident enough and able to speak up and ask good questions. Our key role here, I think, is to provide credible challenge in most respects for an in-house attorney. I think you need to have good writing skills, preferably in bulleted format, know how to get to the meat of the matter very quickly, because if you have paragraphs and paragraphs of an email, you're going to lose that business leader's attention. They just have too much to do. And I think you really need a good working understanding of attorney-client privilege and attorney work product doctrine and other protections, and be able to avoid having you or your business clients over or underuse those privilege assertions.
That's an excellent one, particularly the one on attorney-client privilege. I'm sure we could do an entire webinar on that because, as you both well know, there's so many distinctions when you're in-house counsel. How the privilege works for you versus when you have outside counsel involved, and because we are again within the company and we're technically also the client, so to speak, at the same time. So a lot of different channels to navigate there. So that's a great point. And I would also agree about really building trust, as you said, Nikki, is super important. So people then they're inclined to come to you, right? Not just come to you versus I got a problem, I got to go talk to legal. Versus no, I should be talking to legal. I want to talk to them because you got a great relationship. So really good points there. Elizabeth, sticking with you, what would people be surprised to know about being an in-house counsel and working as one?
I think the first biggest surprise I got once I really started working in-house was how easy it is to please people just by being responsive to them. Especially in a large organization where the leaders and the attorneys are frequently very busy, to have somebody who works on the line that is trying to receive legal counsel reach out to you, just the mere fact that you responded back to them quickly, it just makes people so appreciative. And I never would have guessed how easy it is in that respect to make your clients so happy.
Wow, I agree with you 100% there. I think simply even communicating timelines has so much to do with that. To your point, that makes you more of a trusted advisor. Nikki, you may concur with that one. That they're responsive. Oh my God, this is incredible. Because when people are really busy, the fact that you merely responded, even to say, hey, this is on my radar, it's in queue, I can have something to you on Friday, is that acceptable? That seems to go leaps and bounds. So, what would you say is a surprise for you, Nikki, or a surprise that someone diving in in-house counsel practice would encounter?
I think I have a couple. I think one would be, how much of your job on certain days is not about the law. You become an advisor, and that position is one that people really they start bringing everything to you. And I'm a specialist, so they bring stuff that's outside of my specialty, but also I think Elizabeth said it really well. You're a gut check, and you become a gut check for things that are just business related and not necessarily a legal question per se. I'd say the other thing that is surprising and that I still am surprised by is how much certain firms still just don't get it. And how it's just either they don't understand your business, or they don't understand how things work, or they don't understand that the 4-page memo is just not helpful. Just like how much they just don't get it. So
it's an interesting perspective that this webinar and other similar type of programming is probably just as helpful for the lawyer that's not even interested in getting it in-house, but that works with clients that are in-house. Right? Because understanding what your clients are dealing with makes you a better outside or attorney or private practice, right? Particularly, the more you know their business, the more you know their needs. And a really a great comment that came from what you all said earlier about being in-house counsel is that I think the more you're a team player and people sort of begin to forget that you're actually a lawyer, the better. You're the business partner that happens to be the legal brain in the room too. They just see you as a part of the team, and then trying to get a trusted asset and an advisor. You all both sort of touched on this a little bit earlier with respect to telling us about your individual paths. But, Nikki, if you want to briefly tell us some advice that you'd have for someone that's interested in getting an in-house counsel position.
Well, I think it really depends on, at what point in your career you're looking. If you are looking, in the 7-year range or higher, then I would say that you need to know, your specialty well, and feel confident in being able to give, kind of like Elizabeth said, quick advice and be able to stand on that. But I also think, networking is really big, and you want to stay top of mind. So if you decide that you want to go in-house, a lot of times these positions, either they're not posted or they're posted, very briefly, maybe on LinkedIn. And so, knowing that these positions are coming down the pike is helpful. Knowing somebody at a company where a position's opening up is really helpful. I've always found that, if you can get your resume to the hiring manager through someone in the company, that's a big leg up. So, I'd say, talking to people, making in-house friends so that, when positions do come up, you're top of mind and people are like, oh yeah, I remember, so said that they were looking. And so, maybe this is something that I should tell them about.
Awesome. Super helpful. And networking is key to getting a role here. So much more happens than just when you send them the resume, via LinkedIn. Elizabeth, what would you have to say, advice for someone that's interested in getting an in-house counsel position?
Yeah, well, I agree wholeheartedly with Nikki, but I would also add, especially from my experience and experience of others that I've known, is that be patient, be persistent, and be open-minded. A lot of times the descriptions in the job postings really don't tell you a lot about what the position actually will do. And so, like, for example, the position I'm currently in, had I seen it posted, it wouldn't have occurred to me to apply for it. So I think sometimes it's worth putting in an application, making sure that your resume ties to it as closely as possible, so that you can at least maybe get that opening call if there's an in-house recruiter, for example, and use that to find out more about the position. If you know somebody in-house there, you can call them and ask them if maybe they can find out additional information about the position. But just be open-minded, both as to your own potential qualifications and how a potential in-house position might actually fit for you.
Yeah, I mean, great point there, Elizabeth. Had I not been open-minded, I probably wouldn't have been in my role today, where I was able to come in and sort of, hey, number two in command of a publicly traded company. At the time, I heard towing and trailer hitches, and I'd never towed a thing in my life. And I said, well, what's that about? Automotive supplier in Michigan. Most in-house counsel roles have some connection to the automotive industry. So you're thinking, oh, it's just like the others. But to your point, I think when you're open-minded, you'll find an opportunity that you never would have seen coming sometimes, and then being able to kind of massage and adjust your outlook. So, I think it goes without saying, and all would agree here. Nikki, you mentioned this earlier. Elizabeth, you said you definitely agreed that networking is key. So with that, Elizabeth, how would you say ABA involvement has maybe boosted your career path or even opened up opportunities for you in the in-house realm or otherwise?
Oh, definitely. So I've been very active in the ABA, starting just as a member since I was a junior associate. And in the section of litigation, which is what I'm most heavily involved in, I've been contributing to committee work there since I was probably a mid-level associate, and I've been in leadership since 2010. And through that, especially through my actual substantive work with committees and then subsequently in leadership, I have made so many contacts with people who are now in-house or were in-house, or when I knew them, they were in private practice, but then they went in-house, and I've been able to learn from them so much about their companies, their potential clients, if you're an outside counsel. In addition, I think it's been very important for me through ABA, through my active participation in it. It's given me lots of opportunities to publish and speak publicly, and building your resume with those types of career building events is very key in establishing a specialty and selling yourself to clients and potential employers, at least in my experience.
Absolutely. Nikki, your thoughts on ABA?
Yeah, I would agree with Elizabeth. I think this is my 6th year in leadership. And for me, it was really about, finding great mentors and a lot of friends in-house. And, people who literally were telling me about positions as they were opening up. And these were people who were, from all over the United States telling me about jobs in Chicago. And when I used to live in Chicago. So, until this day, I mean, going into this position at 3M, there was one of my ABA friends helped me, negotiate my terms coming into 3M. So, just a lot of a wealth of knowledge and some wonderful mentors and people who are, literally friends for life. So, I mean, to me, it's really been about the networking.
Awesome. So team, for Q&A, I think we've got one question that's just come in. And again, I know for anyone who wants to ask questions, and Tracy will correct me if I'm wrong, you should be able to use the platform just to submit your question, and we'll see that pop on up. We've got just a couple minutes for those. The first question we had come in says, I'm a 1L and I will be spending summer in fall 2019 in-house with a global Fortune 500 company. I feel like I don't know much about the law or business as of yet. What would your best piece of advice be for students in this position? So, Nikki, Elizabeth, whoever wants to chime in on that first, go right ahead.
I'll just say from my experience as a 1L in-house, nobody expects you to know the law. They really don't. All they're looking for is somebody who has a yes, how can I help attitude, and somebody who knows how to write. So they will give you the research assignments they need. So I think as long as you are available and responsive and engaged, and you can really hone your writing skills, you'll do fine.
I'd agree with that. I would also add, just be a sponge and soak up as much as you possibly can. Take the opportunity to go to lunch with people. Take the opportunity to go to lunch with, not only as people who are, at associate level in-house, but also, people who've been there for 10 years, 20 years. Ask them about their career paths. People love to talk about themselves. So take the opportunities to really network your way around the company while you're there. Because I think, a lot of, you're there to learn. So I'd say, soak up as much as you can and make great connections. Because even if you don't end up there at the end of, when you graduate from law school, those connections could literally stay with you for life.
That's an excellent point. I'd agree 100% with you as well, ladies. And the question came from Trezell Ragas, and Trezell, I hope that answered what you were looking for. The only nugget I would just add is, and Nikki, you alluded to this position may or may not be one that you're vying for. I'm going to return the following summer, or this is my full-time employment. But what you will get out of it, and Nikki took the words out of my mouth, is about being a sponge, right? And as Elizabeth said, they're not expecting you to know necessarily anything, particularly when you come in. You just got introduced to the law and may not have a business background. But if you're coming in with a willingness to learn, a willingness to help, having a great attitude, and focus on making those connections, at a minimum, you're going to walk out of that summer with that experience on your resume that you can then leverage for future opportunities, and hopefully more network growth that you've had, because your network is going to contribute to your net worth long term. So with that, definitely stay the course, and we wish you well this summer. Okay, I think as I'm peeking here, I don't see any additional questions at this time. Again, I would like to spend this time of thanking our panelists, Nikki and Elizabeth. Thank you so much for joining us today. You all have been fantastic and just given an absolute wealth of knowledge. So anyone that even didn't get a chance to listen to this live, when you listen to this on the replay, it's going to be a fantastic listen. So with that, I want to thank everyone for their time today. Again, my name is Jerome Crawford. And Tracy, I will kick it to you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. This has concluded the webinar, and you will receive a recording of the webinar later this week. Thank you.